You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Hello, my lovelies. Welcome to another episode of Gingerarchy. I'm your host, Trishee Stewart-Mann, and I have a longtime favorite of the show and of the We Are Libertarians network, Mr. Hodey Johns. How are you today, Hodey?
Oh, I'm great. Hi, all the Trisha's lovelies. Thank you for sharing the spotlight with me today. I really appreciate it. You let me on your stage, Gingerarchy. If I ever grow hair, I am sure it will be red.
I'll get
positive.
you a red wig.
Yeah, the red wig will be fine. You know, I prefer like the Ronald McDonald red. I don't want I want the very obviously artificial, because I don't want to be the guy that like wears a wig and denies it. I want to be like, I love this wig, bro. Like, this is my jam.
I'm gonna find a toupee that's like bright red for you. Yes. There are a few people that aren't ginger anarchists that listen to this show. Just a few. So
that doesn't seem right. At least do what I do and shave it off in solidarity and just be like, show some humility while you're listening. We have a very defined audience here. Got to be anarchists. Got to be red hair.
I have cornered the market for red-haired anarchists.
It's
so there's people listening, or
all seven of them. The red-haired libertarians. There's a few of those accounts.
There are some, but
anarchists
some also call themselves libertarians. I can think of one that I had to change my Twitter name because she stole it. Who is actually conservative. Some of her stuff's pretty good, but she's definitely right winger.
I believe I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I know. It's that tends to be a thing in the LP.
When I say when you love Donald Trump, you're really not.
Yeah,
I mean, he is funny. I do enjoy his antics sometimes.
His comedy's great. Yes. It's his politics that kind of bugs me. He was fantastic in Home Alone. I didn't mind that. Yep. And honestly, his
Celebrity Apprentice is probably one of my favorite reality shows. If you've ever seen it, it's hysterical.
Yeah. His stuffed crust pizza advertisement was spot on. Just for some reason, all that background didn't translate very well to the White House. Hard to believe, I know. For all the anarchists out there, you would have thought if anybody could do it was going to be him.
Well, one is a job producing something and the other is not.
Yeah. Oh. Ooh, zing.
We're going to get them all today, Hodey.
Yeah.
So I brought Hodey on, and it's not really an interview because it's more of like a co-hosting discussion we're having. Hodey is one of my go-to people when it comes to economics. He is also considers himself an anarcho-capitalist, such as myself. And there's been a lot of buzz happening about the student loan forgiveness that Joe Biden has bestowed upon some. So I found that there's two camps of people, and we'll kind of get into break it down a little bit today. Hodey's going to be here to kind of help us understand how this plays out and where the money comes from and who it hurts. But it's up to $20,000 in loans, I believe. Pell Grants would be the $20K and then $10K for other student loans. I think there's income caps. You have to be of a certain income. So in that sense, I believe that middle income people will have a larger percentage of their debt, or, as compared to their income, would be forgiven, just obviously because if you make $75,000 a year and $20,000 is forgiven, it's a lot bigger of a portion of your life than if you make $250, which I think it was the cap. Was it $250?
Per household for couples.
Okay.
So $125 if you're a solo guy, and $250 for the couples.
Yeah. So screw the single people, right? No, actually, that makes sense. But there's an issue with this because it doesn't solve the problem with the student loan crisis. So a lot of people assume, and I made a post about it on social media earlier in the week, that I did have student loans. Now, I didn't finish school and they weren't terribly huge. So I was able to pay them off in a timely manner. I happened to bartend at the time. And so it was really good cash. And so I was able to pay that off pretty quickly. I was actually getting married. And so I wanted to erase that before I went into a wedding and getting married. So it's bothersome to me that I found a way to do it and that other people just don't have to, even though they signed the same type of contract that I did. It's not that I am angry at them for having their debt forgiven, because I do think that it's kind of predatory but it's also still a contract. So I find that a lot of people that pay these student loans, till they're 40 or 50 years old, that they'll get a $65,000 vehicle and pay it off in 5 years. So I guess it's the difference is somebody can take away that vehicle. Nobody can take away your education or the fact that you don't value that education. So, Hodey, what are your thoughts on this as far as people getting angry or other people saying, why should you be angry that somebody's debt is forgiven?
Yeah, that seems to kind of be the two camps. Like, just because it was unfair for you doesn't mean it should be unfair for me. Mm-hmm. Do I want to, the pay it forward negatively kind of thing.
Right.
And I think you touched on one of them. One is, and I think we should probably get into this later, but fixing the entire system is way busted. Estimates are by forgiving everybody, even the maximum debt amount that we can, that if everybody who you have to file, right? So even if every single person files, gets their 10K off, gets the other 10K off their Pell Grants, everybody who qualifies, we're going to be back in the same debt hole in 4 years, right? So we are shelling out all this money to do something that this problem is going to be literally exactly where it is today in 4 years.
Yes, this doesn't perpetuate unless, they just keep doing this over and over and over, which isn't impossible.
Right. The other issue is there was every opportunity to be fair about this. You actually could say, hey, if you're alive and you paid off over 10K of loans, apply. And we'll give you $10,000. The thing is, they're giving the $10,000. This is one of the big misconceptions that I wanted to get to. There's a lot of people that hear the word forgiveness and in their political maneuvering think that this is just like, I'm just hitting an eraser, right? And this is actually a pretty common thing that when I said, hey, I'm going to come on the show, what's something you want cleared up? This was probably the biggest misconception, is there was a lot of thinking that this doesn't actually affect anybody, because no, they are not going to add a new tax for it. But it's not like there's like an eraser where they just say, oh, okay, you had 10,000? No, or you had 20,000, now it's 10,000 or whatever it is. This is new money that is going to enter the system. And how does new money affect the system? It has the effect of a tax on all the taxpayers, because your money that would have gone to you is in the pockets of others. And it'll affect taxpayers about an average of $2,500. And that's from really, even left-leaning sources. So if you're getting fooled by the term forgiveness, please don't. This is truly as with anything else that gets paid out that we don't have funded, it is money that we had to print. It will weaken the dollar. The greatest irony of this, of course, is that we just passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which at best was $300 billion. It's such a big number, I can't even say it. $300 billion was as high as it was supposed to, or as much as we could possibly save. That's if we didn't count all those earmarks and we're being really optimistic, right? This is going to cost like at minimum $300 billion. And if everybody applies, you're starting to look at 400 billion plus.
I was hearing it could be up to 500 billion to our deficit.
There's a GOP link going around that says it's $1 trillion. There are studies that talk about this. Again, the GOP loves to exaggerate. Yeah. So you do have to look at it because it is from the Penn-Wharton model, which is a valid model. But they were actually taking several models, like if you forgive this amount, it's this. If you forgive this amount, it's this. And they took the highest end, which is like if he forgave something like 25,000 straight up, no qualifications or something, it was $1 trillion. But that's not what ended up being the thing that got discussed. So, be careful with your numbers, exaggeration. We don't need to exaggerate to make this look bad. Yeah. You just had this big act that was supposed to save us $300 billion. And literally in the next week, you spent every single dime of it giving away student loans didn't address the problem. We'll be right back here in 4 years. So the Inflation Reduction Act, even if you are a big believer in it, you spent it. You spent every single piece of inflation that you would have saved us. And now Americans are no better than we were before the Inflation Reduction Act.
And so that kind of goes to the point. A lot of people will say, well, we spend into debt, whatever this is, at least it'll help middle class and lower class people. But that's not necessarily true, because spending into debt gets spread around, and they get spread around more to the poor by things called inflation.
Yep.
And which is, in my opinion, the worst tax on the poor, because if you're a billionaire and a loaf of bread is $3 instead of $1.50, doesn't really matter to you, but it certainly matters to the poor. So, we just keep spending into debt, increasing the deficit. How does this affect an everyday American? So how does the fact that we're going to run another maybe up to 500 billion, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, how does it affect the average person that didn't go to college?
Well, you are subsidizing the wealthy. So the top 60% are going to be receiving 70% of the funds. Those are, of course, cherry pick numbers. But then again, it was cherry picked to start with, because what it is you kind of said, well, we aren't going to make the super rich. Like if you're making 125K plus a year, you don't qualify for this.
Which is a good income, but that's really not super rich by the time you pay for health care and housing.
Right. And this isn't, they always talked about billionaires, right? Like we're going after the billionaires. Now you just went over somebody made $125,000. I've talked about this before. There's no way to have a restaurant unless you're bringing in like $1 million a year.
Oh yeah.
Like there's just no way to with the competitiveness that there is in the food market. So this is, if you're a small business owner, you are paying heavily to subsidize somebody else, even if you have loans. And in fact, Trishee, your point is really good, because if you still have loans and you make 125,000, all the normal people look around, they're like, you had 125,000 a year. How didn't you pay that off? Most of the time you're in a type of situation where you are needing you bring in a lot, but to keep your business afloat, you also have to spend a lot. Restaurants are a good example, but this goes for about any retail outlet. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a mom and pop store, so subsidizing the wealthy, there's that. And the cost, that $2,500 approximation seems pretty good. That is per person. So probably one of the most unethical things about the Federal Reserve is, if I am going to make everybody's money weaker by $2,500, the least I could do is at least give them the $2,500 per person, right? This is the equivalent. We are doing it, and I want to stress this. This is exactly the same. What they have done is the equivalent of, say, print $2,500 per person and give it one out to every citizen of the United States. Think about what you could do with $2,500 right now, especially if you are poor, right? And so what it is the economy will adjust as though you just got $2,500 if you're the common person. That's how the economy will adjust. It will say every average person has another $2,500 worth of buying power. TVs will go up, food will go up, all that normal stuff we've been seeing with inflation, right? By now, it's almost absurd how used we are to dealing with this, right? This just feels like life. And so inflation is going to go up.
And wouldn't that happen with the cost of higher education as well?
Oh, yeah. So that's another biggie. Whenever you subsidize anything, it's bound to get more expensive. Yeah. Because you just say, hey, if things get too pricey, we'll bail them out. Because who's getting this money? The holders of the loans.
Yeah.
Your banks, your government's getting this money, right? Because they're the ones who hold the loan. Now, if I give somebody a bad loan and they can't pay it, well, especially with the term of education, you actually can't take that back, right? Versus like a house with a bank, I can say like, well, at least I got the house, right? So if you really wanted to stick it to the banks and the rich folks, you would just say, yeah, let them bankruptcy file it. Let them just say like, yeah, discharge this. I'm not paying it, but instead what they've opted to do is pay it for them. And they're saying like, well, this is great news, because now I have some extra assurance that if this debt gets big, government's just going to come in and pay it off for people when they start falling more and more behind.
And when a university also sees that people will get subsidized that much, well, if they could afford it before, let's just add that amount, which is, what happens in any type of business, and private universities can do that. Public universities. It's pretty easy to figure out where it's going to go.
Yeah. We subsidize corn shoots through the roof. It's really that basic. Go ahead.
My oldest daughter is starting her freshman year at a very nice liberal arts college here. Now, I want to stress that I'm not a huge fan of taking out lots of loans. So that was something I always stress to my kids, whatever you want to do, you can do it. But I don't believe in getting yourself in debt for a 4-year degree. However, she is one of those people that loves education. She's going to college, but she did find a way. And this school is $72,000 a year with room and board a year. she found a way to get enough grants, scholarships, worked, and got a small gift from a family member. And she only had to take $2,500 out in loans. Now, what incentive in the world would she have to do that if 10,000, and she can't? So now she's going to do this for 4 years, hopefully figure out a way to work really hard to not take out loans, not have any extras. What incentive does she have to do that? And honestly, she's kind of thinking, I'm going to try to get the best out of this year and see where I'm at financially and see what my future holds, because it might not be worth it for me to be, a philosophy and linguistics major when, I'm going to carry this on my back and work my whole way through school when I should be, focusing on my education. I just think it sends a really poor message. I don't think it's it's encouraging to people that are going to college now.
Yeah, again, I do want to preface this whole thing by government wants us to fight with each other. They want you to fight your neighbor. They don't want you to look at the problem. So please don't mistake with what I'm about to say is in terms of like victim blaming. But the ultimate fact exists that think about this like with healthcare, right? And what we saw happen there. If I have insurance to make sure I don't get hurt and I'm paying $200 a month out of that, well, that's a lot of fun I can have in a given year that I'm not having. Right? Like if I'm paying $200 a month, that's money I just plain don't have.
Or
it's
800
gone
over here.
Or 800 if you're Trishee, right? So like I'm paying this insurance so that if something happens to me, I'm going to be okay, right? If I need like an open heart surgery, cancer, something like that, I'm forking over $200 a month to make sure that I'm protected. Okay. Now there's somebody over here who didn't fork over the $200, and that's fine, right? Like this is a risk. We all have to take the risk. I'm guaranteeing that I'm losing $200 so that in the off chance I have a real problem that I'm taken care of. This person is going to enjoy their extra $200 monthly income, and they're on their own if something serious happens, right? So this is the gamble that we all take, and I encourage everybody to wisely take this gamble, to say, look at themselves honestly and just say, like, am I ready to die, because I need this extra money if something bad happens? Am I, and there's no way to mitigate every risk in life. I'd love to do everything. So what happens is then all of a sudden people are forced to give insurance for pre-existing conditions. Well, what was the point then of me? Why would I, if I know that you're going to do that for pre-existing conditions, why in the world would I get insurance until something bad happens to me?
Right.
Because you're required now to say, it doesn't matter. He needs the open heart surgery now. Go ahead and lock him in at the same insurance rate as everybody else. Well, there's no point then. The poor guy who paid $200 a month or $800 a month or whatever it may be is just out that money and gets absolutely no advantage compared to the person who said, I didn't want to take the risk at all. And then when their bet didn't pan out, so like what you're doing is you're actually paying for the people who took the risk and messed up their risk,
right?
And this is so I make that analogy, and this plays out well with education to say that I took this big risk, this big loan, and now somebody else is bailing me out for it, even though you didn't take that risk. Well, that's not fair, right? People didn't get an education because they said, you know what, I'm not going to, and I don't say education, I'm not going to get that higher education because I don't think it's worth the loan. That's not fair for, and I guess not fair. It's not smart for me is what I've analyzed. And now when you're seeing people get their loans bailed out, it's like, I should have just gone, right? Like I should have just done it. I should have gone to a community college. I should have gotten really cheap secondary education and got this degree. But I analyzed the risk as a market person would, and not as, oh, wait, now there's big government intervention into the market. And now it's going to open up a lot of, well, if government's forgiving loans, I'm not going to pay them, and because they'll just have to do this again and again and again. Not coincidentally, this is also right before midterms. 70% of people who graduate college are registered Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and Libertarians, and other party affiliations make up that other 40%. This is a blatant bribe to your base.
Yes.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that money's gone. So
yeah, I mean, that's all there is, right? Is you're bribing people who tend to vote for you anyhow to try and generate some enthusiasm. The money's gone, it's spent. You never saw it, right? And so, and I want to be specific in answering your question. What happens, to the average person? you're just out $2,500. It's that simple. You never received it and you never will, but you paid for it, and you will pay for it when it comes to your groceries, your food, your rent, and other people's higher education. It's really not fair to the people who have buckled down and decide to say, you know what, I'm going to live within my means. And fairness is a huge thing to do with it. Again, government could have done this any which way. They could have handed every person $2,500, and they chose not to do it. They could have said, hey, if you paid off your loan already, let's go ahead and file and we'll get you some of your money back too. They didn't do it, and they had the power to do it.
See, I've heard some rumors, and I was trying to find some good articles that you can apply for that. And then somebody said, no, that's a state issue. What's surrounding that? Because I think a lot of people have questions, including myself, because I haven't found anything concrete on that. Yeah,
you're good. So there's two issues. So the big one is the CARES Act, and that enables you that if you have paid a student loan, you can actually get money back out of your student loan. And that was now this only goes for the last 2 years. So it's actually since 2020. So if you have paid into your student loan since 2020, you can actually take money out of that student loan. All right. Or so if you paid off your loan,
which administration would this be under?
CARES. Oh, that would be, I think Donald Trump would have been the re-signer on that one.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know that, I don't
weird.
I know.
It's almost like they all just keep doing the same thing and say something else.
Yeah. Boy, especially with physical conservatism.
Yeah.
But so the CARES Act, I'm looking at it, originally published March 27, 2020. Mm-hmm. Yep, Donald Trump, everybody. I had to look that up, but there you go. So what it is you can take money back out of it. And so what you can do, and people are talking about online, is you can say, well, I paid off my student loans, but I paid $10,000 in the last 2 years. You can actually take that money back out under the CARES Act and then apply for this and then have the government pay for it. So that's a nice bit of tricksy complexity for those of you who paid off your loans recently, especially that is something you should look into doing. The other part that you are looking at here is then this is where it varies state to state. Am I going to have to pay money if I take this $10,000? Oh, there's this check thing. So federally, you do not. There is an exception within the thing that actually says, hey, this money, you can't, it's not going to be federally taxed. That being said, there are 13 states that actually don't care where the money comes from. And if you get $10,000, they get a slice of it. Now, if those 13 states, some of them right now are thinking, hey, should we make an exception for this thing? They may do it. Mm-hmm. And so that's something you're going to have to stay on top of. But anyhow, that's as far as what you described to me, I think those are probably the two things at play.
Yeah. So we were talking about the CARES Act and the last 2 years. And what's really interesting, if you think about this, the timing of the student loan forgiveness, a lot of times Biden would talk about how it was the best time. These people are really hurting right now, and the economy is bad. Their buying power is less. And so let's go ahead and do this for them right now. When in fact, for the last 2 years, they've carried this emergency from COVID, and it's still going on, where you didn't have to pay those certain student loans, interests had halted. So in all fairness, this is actually probably the easiest time for somebody to hold student loans, considering the last 2 years. It's almost like that got extended and then just forgiven. So as soon as COVID happened, there was a master plan to just like wipe this out to please the base or something. I don't know.
Sure. Well, you basically say, hey, you don't have to pay on it for 2 years. And then when things resume and you do have to pay on it, people are going to be back underwater. Most people.
Do you think that's basically what it was? Almost a little bit of a life, a life or raft for the people that were like, oh shit, I finally have to pay these after 2 years of not.
I'm positive and in fairness to most people, like and maybe this is a good segue into the next subject, but our economy is constructed in an extremely unfair way. And so it's sad because you got responsible people who are playing the game, and are good at playing the game and making these sacrifices. But it's like, oh, I made the sacrifice of not having kids, so that I can afford to stay afloat. That's not a sacrifice people should have to make.
Yeah.
Like if you want a kid, this should not be such a tremendous financial burden. Education should not cost what it costs. Oh my gosh. So I actually went on the Department of Education's website, and I just generally was like, are colleges regulated? And they very proudly are like, oh, colleges are some of the most heavily regulated, structured, monetarily structured, like, organization. And they said this like they're bragging. Right. Like they were like, oh, yeah, we don't let people just do whatever in college. I know you're worried about it because the public education system is great. And now you're worried about going to college and you're worried that all of a sudden things are going to be less regulated. No, they're actually more regulated. Like, don't even worry about it. So, I mean, and this is, I mean, we can get some personal anecdotes there. I've been to college. Almost everybody I know has been to college has had to take useless filler courses. Mm-hmm. And why? Well, this is clearly a money grab. If I got an A in calculus in high school and you want me to take pre-algebra again because for my theology degree, well, we just want to make sure all our graduates have at least 12 credits in math. Oh, so you want me to take pre-algebra, algebra, and geometry, even though I am 4 classes ahead of those? Yeah, I guess so. So that's like the other one waste of time. The other one
I was a vocal performance major and a piano minor, so we don't have to talk about waste.
Right. I mean, they stuff you full of these courses that I get like some amount of being well-rounded, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if you're an engineer, my dad goes through this, that writing reports is a pretty regular part of being an engineer. I'm not trying to like say like, oh, it's okay to be like the worst, like have absolutely no mathematical prowess at all in theology. Because I mean, there's things like how often should I forgive my neighbor? Well, 77 times 7 times, or there's all these cute little, oh, how many fish were given? 40 days and 40 nights. Oh, cute. You should have some concept of like what 40 is.
Yeah.
Maybe some kind of general thing. But I mean, you could.
But aerodynamics.
Right. I know. And so they'll force you to take these classes that are like way beneath you. And then the other thing they do, and this is another perhaps even more common situation, is you'll end up having to take some, blank studies, and you'll show up and the professor will just be like, hey, if you're just here, just log in once a week and I'll give you a C for the class. Like I'm really not trying to do anything here. Well, that's theft. Right. This is straight up theft.
Yeah, that person, somebody's paying a lot of money for this product.
Absolutely. Yeah. You pay in college. You are paying per credit. So when there's a credit hour that is, I am financing, that is extremely unfair. And so, and of course it's regulated, you have to have these courses and those courses. And some colleges are worse than others, and this will differ from college campus to college campus. But the bottom line is, even if you're U.S. geography teacher, this is a real example I have in mind because it was probably the most egregious. I had a Chicano studies that was just, talk about why standardized testing is bad. And I dislike standardized testing. But I mean, there is some legitimate studying to do about Chicano heritage, and none of it was done in this class. Right. I mean, it was all about why standardized testing is bad. And then I took this U.S. geography course, and it was just, I don't like George W. Bush. Please write an essay on why you also don't like George W. Bush, and you'll get an A. And like there's just so many courses. And sometimes it's just like volleyball, like say you showed up and we'll just count you and we'll give you an A. And like I said, each one of these things is straight up theft. Yeah. Straight up theft of your services. There is an amount being paid. You're expected to pay. Maybe you took a loan out for it. Maybe you got a scholarship for it. Maybe something, but somebody's paying for it, right? I don't care who financed your hot dog, but if you don't get a hot dog, when the money got paid, somebody's stealing from you, right? So this is robbery that almost every college graduate can relate to, right? And this is how commonplace that robbery is. Think about it: if you just delete the classes that were worthless or beneath that you had already proven that you were able to take in high school, think about how much you would save. And college is going to be at least that expensive, and then furthermore, because of all the regulations, there are so many people that aren't allowed to participate. One of the best courses we have for public schools, thank goodness, is like the Khan Academy. That's absolutely free, right? And so you can get you can go all the way, elementary school to high school on the Khan Academy if you want to, but can they do it for college? No, they absolutely cannot. It's like, why should these guys be able to do it free with a couple advertisements and some donors? And then all of a sudden that experience is forced to stop at college? That is absolutely unfair. So much of our economy would be reduced to, look at TV, ad banners or monthly subscriptions or something affordable and something that you can choose. And instead what we have is this, no, college is this experience. There is no alternative experience.
And that is, I think there's a reason that the price got so inflated, obviously all these regulations. And then everybody kind of blindly following the idea that a 4-year degree is a way to get a job. When if you actually do want a liberal arts around a degree or something like that, then that would be what you'd get, just the education. It's not a way to get a career. Obviously it is helpful in some certain circumstances, but I really like the push for gray collar jobs. My 14-year-old wants to attend our local career center and she's been looking into 2 careers. It would be electrician, a commercial electrician, or diesel mechanic, because you can go to like a year school. You can even do an apprenticeship, but a year school will really put you into a good job. I believe it's around $12,000, and you can walk into a place and make $75,000 a year, and you have one loan that can actually be more reasonable. Some of these schools cost, $5,000 to $7,000 for the year, but to me, that's more practical. And you're not sitting there studying, basket weaving from some country. But I think that's looked down upon, which is really kind of sad, because a lot of the people that will suffer because of these loans being forgiven, that $2,500, they didn't do that. They paid for, they went and paid to take a trade school and go, make money right away. And they're not in debt. They're helping the economy. They're providing a service that you're going to need. So that's the moral part that bothers me. It's not necessarily being mad at the people whose loans are forgiven. I think it's the fact that where is the incentive to do what's right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Why should I need a 4-year college degree and then another 2 years in order to teach about the works of Shakespeare, when somebody who has to deal with, we'll make it real tough, electricians, right? You can kill yourself and you can kill others. And that's 6 months, 3 months. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, something isn't really syncing up here. Right. That there's kind of a problem there. Your pilot who's flying your plane can get that license in a few months. And yet, if you want somebody who just, I don't want to throw any degrees under the bus, because I got a theology degree, right? I understand. And I don't work in that field. So I totally understand that some of these degrees aren't always guarantees. I intentionally chose a degree that I could stay awake in class for. Yeah. And
well, you wanted more the education part. I think my daughter identifies with that. She loves lectures and studying. She's just one of those type of people. So there is value in that. But to think that that's what most people should do is ridiculous.
Or that, you can outwit somebody from your personal studies. I have learned so much more after college than I did during college. And I'm not even throwing my college education under the bus. I had a couple of bad ones. I ended up getting my theology degree itself was actually a really good education. And they accepted a lot of credits that my other colleges weren't. Again, that's one of those things that varies college to college. Pick you a good one, pick the one that takes the most of your credits. Cannot stress that enough. Especially if they'll give you, in-state, community college, whatever's. You mentioned that a lot of people are like, oh, just get a degree. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. That shouldn't be a thing for anything. Yes. Right. Like, and I think it's starting to kind of manifest itself that that's not really how employers look at this anyhow. Right. Like, I don't have my degree in writing. I'm a professional writer and why is it? Because people click my articles when I write them. Yeah. And that's how it is. Now, I think that matters, right? Like, shouldn't that matter even more? Are people going to be upset that I didn't get like an 8-year doctorate in literature? Maybe, I guess, if you really want to be that way. But really, it's the market that said, I value Hodey's work over this guy who's done 8 years and got his doctorate, and I think there's a very put up or shut up element that we've kind of lost to this. When we look at the history of universities, they used to be cheaper because they wanted that notoriety society. And this is a kind of an interesting evolution throughout American history. You look at Thomas Jefferson, who founded the University of Virginia, so some of these other, founding fathers. It's like, and their colleges were very near and dear to them because they wanted to be able to say, if you go to my college, the reason that matters is because a law degree from here matters more than a law degree from over there, because our education is just that darn good. And so the competitive part was providing you the maximum value in those classes. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's all just graduation rates. Yeah. It's just how many people graduate, how many people slogged through it, and they would cut you a deal because they wanted smart people coming to their colleges. And they also wanted to say, hey, we can take anybody and look, we can turn them into an absolutely brilliant lawyer, And so you go from that, and then you even look at certain colleges. Here's another one that lost their way, but UC California, Berkeley, which didn't even charge tuition because, and I mean, Stanford, there's a bunch of other colleges in this fold that are like, well, we don't charge tuition. Well, how do they make money?
There's still a college like that, by the way.
There are, yeah. And you say, well, somebody's got to be paying for it. Well, they are. Mm-hmm. What it is you graduate, you find this multi-million-dollar job, and the college just has its hands out and say, would you like to throw some of that back out of gratitude? Mm-hmm. And people will pay for that gratitude. Now you might think like, oh, that sounds like inner city stuff. No, it's the elite colleges that do this. It's those Ivy League colleges that really are doing mm-hmm. this, and so, and not every Ivy League college, but, I'm just throwing out very well reputed, ones with great reputations that function this way. And to say that that's really the way it's kind of more supposed to work, is let me prove to you how good my education is. When you go to, a restaurant, for them to retain your business, they've got to give you a great experience there at the restaurant. Colleges are not that way anymore. They want to show you how easy it is to get their degree. Hey, we want you to pay this money, but we'll make it really easy on you. Just please show up for these classes. Hey, listen, we really need you here. We need your attendance. We're padding our stats is what we need. Well, that's not a restaurant, right? Like that's not competitive. Yeah. And because it's regulated, they kind of don't have any interest in being competitive. Mm-hmm. And again, as you mentioned earlier with these loans, their prices aren't competitive either. So the education you're getting is poor, much more poor than it should be in a market society. Because I think there's, and I'm not saying that this should all be like socialized because all colleges should be the same. No, there should be some where it's like, I want to pay like a lot of money for this college. And then people look at that and they're like, whoa, that's like an intense education over there. I can't believe you did that. But then there also needs to be colleges that are like, I can put all the coursework up online. Like right now, and you can do it from home, and you can get this information from home, and then you say, well, how do I know they're any good? Let their work mm-hmm. speak for itself. If if there's a surgeon who graduated from Dorkstown University, and Dorkstown, their surgeons keep killing people. Well, you're not going to employ, their medical degree means nothing.
Yes.
Right. And that's how it should be, versus saying like, hey, look at all these economists. They got their degree from this free college online. They're actually doing surprisingly well in that field. And they're giving people great financial advice. I think maybe we should point more people in that direction. That's the kind of stuff that price-wise gets paid for by advertisements, ad banners. And this is the kind of thing that, again, the market would do it. There's a series of laws that say they aren't permitted. You're not allowed to put this textbook online. You're not allowed to put this course material online. It's funny because, like I said, like Khan Academy will let you do it. And even then, like after like a huge amount of begrudging, you look at college, they're not allowed to do anything.
Right. They still use that old, like, hi, you have to buy this book, even if it's an ebook or whatever. Like, come on, really?
How much does it cost to put ink on a page?
I know.
This is something, and beyond that, how much does it take to put ink on the internet? Yeah. Right. Like you're looking at like next to nothing. This should absolutely be something. Again, it's stuck in an old century because Keynesianism, you're spending money. So that helps our income identity equation. So the more money you spend, the better it is. That's why you get these like healthy wartime economies. That's only because of how we define economics. Again, That's a totally. I'm not gonna overthrow the Federal Reserve on this episode. But
so basically, what we're talking about, like this loan forgiveness, but it's much deeper because there's a problem that wasn't solved. This is one of the problems. There's no competition for your universities or to your community colleges. And so because of regulation, they're not allowed to do certain things that would let them compete. And so it's just going to keep, cycling over and over. Yep. And then, with the government doing what they do with our economy, things are just going to keep getting higher and higher and higher. And then they'll have to figure out a way for somebody, to borrow $150,000 a year. And that's not going to be that person borrowing, and it's going to be all of us.
Right.
You were talking about private, like trade schools and things like that, or universities that will do that. And it's actually really interesting because in places that are less regulated, like I know to be a cosmetologist or a hairdresser, people probably think, oh, you can go to the vocational school and do that and just go take your licensure test. You absolutely can. And it's a decent paying job. Actually, I know a lot of people that work their way up and own their own, but you can also pay $25,000 for 1 year of the Paul Mitchell School. And you will go into a salon where you get like a master stylist. You can make $100,000 easy, so those exist, like, because they're not regulated by the government saying you can't sell this and only this person can do this. And this is this degree and you can't put this out there. And I think that people do value a better education. If I saw that somebody went and spent money they didn't have to at that place, I think this person is the one that I want doing my hair, So I think one of the solutions that we could have is, like you said, the market is forcing people to stop looking at degrees, or the market is saying, how about a career? And this is what we can offer you for less time, a better price, and a better pay and less debt later on. That's what we can do now, because I don't think that the higher education institutions and the government much care about reforming it. Why would they? They don't have any incentive.
You're spot on all those points. It works for them because spending is good, right? And then if people have to take out debt, you have control over them. So that's good, right? Like, I mean, from a political standpoint, these people got to eat out of your hand. And you've really got a lot of control over them. And really it's just, and then, you got control over the type of education that they receive. I don't know if there's any more powerful mechanism that the government has, and I'm including the Department of Defense in this as well, than something that says, here's what you are allowed to learn and here's what you are not allowed to learn. That is an absolutely terrifying thing, just philosophically speaking. Well,
yeah, and you can go back, and I'm comparing it to slavery as the idea. I'm not saying it's the same as actually owning a whole, but it's the same concept. You don't get to know these things because that might make you do something different that I don't want you to do. That's a concept. So there would be things that even if I was a mini statist, or I believe, any rollback of government, I'm okay with. So I always thought the idea would be, why don't you just make the whole student loan payments that somebody's making tax deductible, the whole thing, principal and interest? Wouldn't that be a way not to hurt anybody and to help people?
Yeah, if we're taking off our anarchy hats for a moment, yes. That's a great idea.
Let me put my little beanie hat on and my tiny little gun.
Have them deal with bankruptcy the same way everything else deals with bankruptcy. I mean, you'll hear it's one of the few loans where you can end up owing way, you owe more now than when you got it. Even with a credit card.
Right. They'll shut down a payday lender, but they'll do the same thing,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's at least with a credit card, if I owed $1,000 and I've been making my minimum payments, but I haven't used the credit card, at least my credit card will be lower.
Yeah.
Maybe not very much,
right,
but at least it will be lower because of the way the flexible rates of inflation rates. It's very possible that if you've been making your minimums, you owe more and more and more. And now here's the big thing is they know, like, you say, well, why didn't they do this with like a house or with a car? Well, that's because there's actually something to recapture. Like there's a car in place, there's a house in place, something for us to recapture. Your education is something that stays with you. And the other thing is it doesn't actually cost as much as it does. So when somebody does default on their loans and they just say, hey, we gave this person 4 years of moderate education. They've paid us $40,000 of their $200,000 in loans. Actually, we probably came out positive on $40,000.
Yeah.
for what we actually delivered. We told them it was $200,000. That's what we charged them. Like, I mean, this would be the equivalent of a restaurant saying your steak dinners are, we'll just say $6,000. And it's like, well, most people, they're not good. They defaulted on their loan. They only paid you $50 of the steak dinner. $50 was what the steak actually cost. Yeah. So am I really that upset? You know what I mean? So like, this is kind of what the free market would like want to do with these loans. Even if you're a minarchist, you can at least accept that, hey, some of these loans, I mean, lenders got to get busted in the chops all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Well, yeah. And so if you just say foreclosure is hard to do because sometimes it costs the lender a lot of money, to foreclose on a house. So they will try to work with you sometimes if they think they can get something back out of you.
Oh yeah.
Depending on the market. And obviously in this case, you're right. It's set up like that because you can't take an education back. I mean, who knows? Maybe one day they'll like try to slice out a piece of your brain or something. Oh, I put my anarchy hat back on. Sorry, I'll take that off.
I did it too. I started talking about the market and I was like, oh no, I'm supposed to be thinking like a minarchist for a moment. Thing is, this is a very minarchist position. I mean, it's really something that minarchists, should be leading the charge on, because government interference in this has been beyond incompetent and it's created the entire problem. Even if you want to say like, hey, there's got to be some form of regulation here, if you're a minarchist and you just say, hey, I want people having the confidence of knowing that every single theology major is 12 credits of math, you can at the very least say, hey, can we say 4 credits of math and maybe make that like algebra or better, you know what I mean? As opposed to, or like pre-algebra, but like just the basics. Very easy to do. Very easy to do. Like I said, this is one of the most regulated, even more than public schools. This is very heavily regulated and be very easy to just say like, hey, maybe requiring 20 credits of social studies for an engineering major isn't something we need anymore. And maybe I still value that, but maybe let's scale that back to 4 or 8. Hey, maybe instead of saying, I mean, you look at how they try to fit everything in a box, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody, if you graduate, it's 120 credits, right? So everybody's got to into that 120 credit box. Hey, maybe we find that some of these degrees we're giving out are 90. Maybe they're 65 credits. Maybe they're 127 credits. Why aren't we playing this by ear? Why are we all of a sudden sitting down at the drawing board and saying like, oh, I ran out of credits. I got to get it up to 120 if I'm going to make a whole degree out of this. Shoot, no, we don't have to do that. Thankfully we can say, hey, let's change the regulations, and just say, maybe instead of 120 credits for your degree, it's a different amount. It's a different number. And then all of a sudden people are going to be like, well, then all bachelor's degrees are going to be different. All degrees already are different. Yeah. Oh my goodness. All jobs are different. The jobs we have to prepare people for are all different.
It's that old left-right think where, you can't imagine something working. You're going to imagine the worst thing happening. So you'll just keep what's bad right now that you actually know is bad instead of something that's possibly bad down in the future.
Yep. It's that whole evil thing.
Yes.
And people will take the evil they know over way too much, way too much.
But
yeah.
Go ahead. If you want to talk bad about the left and the right, we can do that. No.
Oh, yeah.
And this kind of goes into that because a lot of people, we talked about the morality of it and why it does hurt people. It's not net neutral. And it gives a bad moral imperative for people. It decreases incentive for people to do what's right. And that's always a bad thing. That is my issue with it. But I do understand, like we were saying, it's not a system that's built for people to succeed. Some people, but not all people to succeed. So I'm not necessarily angry at people having their loans forgiven because I feel like they were raised to think this is the only thing they should do. They got into it. Half of them don't. Have you ever read the whole contract when you signed a loan? Now, I personally have, but most people don't. Okay. No. So do you think that person that doesn't even have their prefrontal cortex developed has read this, understands the nuance, and understands what's going to happen in life? Yes, I believe they still signed a contract. But I do believe it was predatory, and I'm not angry that somebody had that forgiven from them. I'm angry at the people that did it in the first place.
Yeah. You look at the simplicity of a contract in an ANCAP society versus the complexity of the contract you have in a statist society. And it's really, this is an apples to oranges. It is nowhere close to the same. Look, I don't know what the number is. I think it's like 97% of people file their taxes wrong. This is not a matter of you being smart. This is a matter of the tax code just being so unbelievably complex.
You could have a tax attorney that went to an Ivy League school and they don't understand most of it. They only understand a little part that they're supposed to.
I believe if you were to actually try to read our entire tax code for like most states, you would die of old age before you got through it, right?
I feel like if anybody would try to do that, you would, though. You do. You're one of those people that reads the whole act.
I am on page 240 of the Inflation Reduction Act, and that I need to do a whole episode on that because that is as bad can be. But it is something that I do enjoy doing. And even I look at that and I'm just like, well, these are pages taller than a human being is tall. Yeah. You know, and even if you read through it, let's say you read it through. Are you going to remember all of it? There's a 0% chance, right? The 3% who filed their taxes lucky, right? They got lucky. They're lucky. They're not good, you know. So, or you know, it's just really simple for them to file.
Do you remember? I think it was on Fox News when the Affordable Care Act was being proposed and they're trying to pass it. They had some person that had an eidetic memory that was an ultra reader, trying to read it.
This is the type of person you need to be if you're actually you need to have something that most people in society consider like a severe disability. Yeah. You know what I mean? In order to actually remember everything that's in this thing. So the thing is with these contracts, even if you do read through them, there's no way you're going to remember every single, thing here and there. And the other thing is when it's your only choice, because like I said, with the regulations, you don't have an option, you don't have the option of doing something else. I mean, even employers who will pay for your education, they pay for it on your behalf, but they're still signing the same contract. It's not like they get to all of a sudden craft their own type of loan. So this is why you really should not be fighting your neighbors for taking it. Look, we're all out $2,500 no matter what. So if you have $10,000 in loan debt, take it. I mentioned the CARES Act loophole on the show because I think you should do it if you can. The money's given out. You not taking it is not making it go away. Right. If any,
and also if you've paid heavily into the tax system, and that doesn't even include just taxes on all levels, it includes inflation. You're paying a tax. It's just you don't have to file it. You just have to pay it every day.
Right. It's not taking your Social Security.
That's stupid. Yeah.
It's I mean, you paid into it and you got ripped off on the rate that they gave you, but there's no reason for you not to take it. I mean, then you just leave it in the hands of the warmongers. Well, that's not good either. Yeah. So look, just take them, this is why I say it. You shouldn't be mad at your neighbors. The system is really bad. The system is designed intentionally bad. I don't think it's any accident that we'll be here 4 years later. Because, this is all kinds of stuff. So I'll use the Inflation Reduction Act example again. The ACA is subsidized for another 3 years. Everything else in the Inflation Reduction Act is financed for 10 years, right? It's this 10-year push out. Well, why 3 years for the ACA before the American Affordable Care Act goes bankrupt? Oh, because that's right before the next right after the next presidential election. Of course, right? So there's a political timing to this, right? Mm-hmm. So even with this right now, it's politically timed. Politicians are being manipulative, and you shouldn't blame the manipulated. You should blame the manipulator, right? These people are the ones that deserve your scorn. It's not your neighbor's fault. You don't say, you need to read your contracts better. Shut up. Like we said, Trishee was saying, you didn't read your contracts very well, right? Nobody does. Because
I made a post about that too, because I've worked in 2 jobs. I'm an insurance agent and I was a leasing agent for years. So I would sit and go over contracts with people. And I do think something else that would happen more in a voluntary society is that the person explaining it should explain it to the person receiving it. Obviously, when they're getting these student loans from these banks, they don't care. That has nothing to do with it. Where when I went through a lease, I need to make somebody understand what would happen. Or if somebody denied coverage, I need to say why you need it. And the fact that you're denying it puts you in danger. Here's the parameters of it. I think that's important. Most people don't understand contracts, but there's a reason when student loans come about, because where is the incentive to sit down with an 18-year-old and be like, listen, this might get really bad. No, they want to close on a loan,
Right. And because the economy doesn't give you the option of simplicity,
right,
we end up having it's which complicated loan do you want? So don't say, oh, this was really, it's really unfair. Like, look, they wanted the education, and it's like not having a kid because of the economy. Well, that's not really fair, right? Like, I should be able to say, I feel like my calling is as a father, I'd be able to raise the kid really well. And just because politicians can't manage their money, I have to say I'm not having a kid. I totally understand people who say, F that. I'm not playing that game. If you deserve the higher education, you put in the work, you deserve the effort, you'd be able to pay for whatever the actual market value would be. Am I going to blame you for taking out a loan to say, well, I deserve this. I put in all the work. I did everything I can do on my end. I can't control the Fed. I can't control politicians. I try my best. Sure, I show up. I vote at the polls. I do what I know how to do. Look, that is not. It is unfair to ask of somebody, oh, you should have just passed on the education when they put in the work for it. Right. And the education should be, like I said, guys, this could be as simple as an ad banner at the top of an internet screen. I mean, we've had pills that go from free with an advertisement on a label to 6 digits a dose. Yeah. And this is something government does. They do it a lot in healthcare. So many parallels with this in healthcare. Trishee, you mentioned, you're paying for, the system of failure is what you mentioned. It's designed for you to fail. Healthcare, 9/10 of the patients can't afford what they're getting, but it doesn't matter, because the thing is we charge 10 times what it costs. Mm-hmm. So as long as 10% of the people pay the full cost of the thing, I'm making up for all those losses. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to let those other people go. I'm still going to hound them all the time. I'm still knocking on their doors. But that's not fair. Mm-mm. That's not fair. That's not what it's supposed to be like. So the fact that people need to change their behavior, to get what they deserve, to get what they can afford, but society, and I won't say society, government has made unaffordable for them, is extremely unfair to them, and it's not the right way to treat them. They put in the work. Don't blame the victim. They are victims in this scenario. If you've gone to college and you've forked over tons of cash, you are a victim in this scenario. It should have been a lot cheaper. If you didn't go to college, you are a victim in this scenario, not just by the $2,500, but because if you say, oh, I couldn't afford it, so I didn't go, even though I put in the work, that's not fair. That's not, people aren't getting what they deserve and what the market would want them to have. And these regulations are designed to keep you from getting any of those things. It's extremely barbaric. It's really Orwellian. It's dystopian. Use any bad term you want for it, but it really is beyond kind of what you would think. Of course, we talk about simple changes that we can try to make to push for as far as legislation goes, but this is a big system, and you would have to dismantle the entire thing. Even if you wanted to put it back together again, it's broken to the point where it does need like a very serious dismantling before we were to try and fix the problem.
And so, unfortunately, we don't have a simple solution to dismantle it. You can petition the politicians all day long. That doesn't really do much good. And it seems like we just keep, snowballing down into this debt hell of forgiving everything that ever. But I think some things we can do to be hopeful as an anarchist are kind of what I mentioned before, what you did. Mm-hmm. Pick and choose what you can do. If you want to do a gray collar career, or if you want to get a 4-year degree, figure out the cheapest and best degree to get. Like, really think about it. And this starts with parents educating their children, or any young person, maybe it's a young kid you work with or somebody you mentor. Give them what actually happens once you graduate from school or leave home. Give them an example of it, ask them what they want, and help them find a way to do it. Because the more educated that person making that choice is, the less power it gives to, the government and the authorities that don't want them to be educated or have a choice. So it really starts when they're young. It's very important to teach your children about debt, which is something public school doesn't do, which is insane. I'm not a public school fan, but they don't teach them about debt, about loans, about amortization tables, about bankruptcies. These are things that, kids should be taught, even simple, ways to look at it. If you take this back, you're going to owe more, you're not guaranteed a job when you come out in this. Here's a possibility of getting a higher paid job without a loan, those types of situations. What are your thoughts about what we can do now?
Your prescriptions are very good. There is no substitute for expecting government to ever be a substitute for morality is always bad. So you should always seize whatever morality you can. Teach them at home, teach them about earnings. You can teach them about this system if you want. But more importantly, I love being in the idealist anarchist and just talking about the philosophy because it's hardcore, it's cool, it gets people excited, gets people radicalized. But we're in the system, we're in it, right? So this isn't one of those, I don't want people doing waiting for anarchy to happen and then spending their whole lives having waited for anarchy to happen.
Yes, I know quite a few of those people.
Right, me too. And so the thing is, you need to expect that this is the system that we're in and guide people through that. Hey, maybe you do deserve it, but maybe it'd be better for you to hold off on a few years. Maybe do this first, try something else. Encourage kids with their creativity. One of the things that I would like to point out, especially for myself, like I said, I don't have a degree as a writer. Well, how did I get a job as a writer? Because people click my stuff, right? So now a lot of people think, oh, well, that's social media influencers, right? I need people to click my page, and that's really hard. Well, you don't have to do it that way. If you know a lot about medicine and you're not allowed to practice medicine as a doctor, try throwing some interesting medical stuff up there and just seeing how many people will click on what you found or your YouTube videos or discussions. Again, this doesn't have to be social media. This can be something that you write or, something like sales, to just say hey, here's something that can help. Hey, this would have helped me if I became a doctor. Maybe this is something that can help you. Design something and have it sold. I cannot reiterate enough. If you see a job that pays you not a flat wage, but pays you per how well you do or performance, that's probably going to be a really great job. Yeah. If it's in an area that I'll specify, if it's in an area that you're passionate in. And so if you see jobs, if you think, here are my passions and here's what I like to do. Look, I'm a writer in the video game industry. I can tell you right now, people do not care about your college degree when you're they might want to see a little bit if you're a programmer, but let's say you're a designer, right? Let's say I design figures. I want something to look really good on the screen, or an artist. If you have an 8-year art degree, that means nothing. Yeah. They want to see something, right? If what you can produce with no degree looks amazing, you're gonna find a job in the video game industry. You absolutely will. And so this is something, and I will say, I know I've repped Khan Academy a little bit. They'll teach you some C++, guys. They'll teach you some coding classes. They'll teach you some programming. So if you just say hey, I didn't go to college, but I'm really great at programming. Oh my gosh, job offers, floods. You won't be able to stop all the job offers. Your mailbox will be jammed full and you're going to have a real problem trying to tell people, no, I'm sorry, I'm really committed to this employer right now. So there's really great, successful things that people are doing that are kind of bucking the system. Mm-hmm. Because we are, and I think maybe that's one of the best things about the internet era, we're really in a place where we're figuring out where people actually value. Did they value your degree, or did they value what you brought to their lives, the value that you added to their lives? Is that what they're willing to pay for it? If I can create a guide in a video game that helps you find 100 Skulltulas in the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, that creates value for some people. Maybe not everybody, but there's a lot of people who say, man, that's a really valuable guide to have around. I'm so glad it's just a click away. I'll keep clicking on this guy's thing. And advertisers, they don't even pay me. This is free stuff. Advertisers just say hey, can I get a banner or something on your screen, please? And I'll say, oh, sure. Yeah. Pay me this per click, pay me this per view. Every time somebody views my page, even if they don't buy a single thing from you, I get money from this. Mm-hmm. So there are absolutely ways to get around the system and really kind of avoid playing the classic game that you're supposed to play. Yeah. I would really stress that there's a lot of fear that's created around that, especially from older generations, to say, I didn't get my college degree, I did something else instead. There's a fear there for people who did get their college degree and say, I don't know if they're going to be okay. If you have a passion and a moderate work ethic, you're going to be fine. take those deep breaths. I would say stop pushing college on kids if it's not something encourage them if they do, right? There's a lot of scholarships out there. There are scholarships every year. This is my final piece of advice. There's scholarships every year that go without an applicant. And a lot of times they're goofball. They're like Burger King Kids Club. They're, something just Delta Airlines,
There's a lot of resources on the internet that will tell you about obscure scholarships. My daughter ended up applying for. I tried to get her to write essay on the Fountainhead because Ayn Rand said she wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Just little things like that. And it could be $1,500 here or $2,000 there, but it does add up. So.
Oh, way adds up. I mean, sometimes it's big chunks. They'll give you 20,000 or they'll pay for the whole thing if you get it. And sometimes they're just $1,000 here and there. Hey, $1,000 for a five paragraph essay is not a bad day's work, Yeah. I mean, so if you really want to go to college, don't always accept that you have to get a loan no matter what. Or
that you have to go right out of high school.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Go get a sales job for 4 years. You're going to have a lot of money. You might not want to go to college after that.
Take a moment. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, when I got into, I was trying to make my degree work and then I got that job in the restaurant industry and it was just like, oh, I'm making a lot of money. And I mean, a lot. And I could work 20 hours a week and be making more than I was before in mortgage when I was working 45 hours a week.
Yeah.
This is really the way to go.
I would say insurance, you can go, there's several different lines you can get, but each class is about a 40-hour to 80-hour class.
Yep.
You get it. You pay $600 for each one, and you can start a job at $40,000 plus commission. Yeah, that's no debt. That's nothing.
Right.
So
and there's some things. I mean, people will pay for you to do it. There's a lot of licenses that you can get where people are like, "Hey, we're short on this."
Real estate will do that a lot.
Yeah. Real estate will do it a lot. Even stuff like morticians. There's actually kind of a shortage there right now.
Really? That's actually a pretty lucrative job.
Yeah, it is. There's certain things even in the medical industry
you heard it from Hodey and Trish, people. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Hodey, but go take care of dead people. This is your way out of college. This is
a great way. And so if you just say, hey, they're short, but I'm interested in doing the job, I'll get the degree and I'll agree to work for you afterwards. That's a golden situation, and there are places like that. I mean, even take them up on these offers because a lot of people don't. If you decide to get a job at McDonald's because they said, hey, we will pay for your economics degree while you're here, hold them to it. Mm-hmm. Don't feel bad. Like it's going to be complicated, but because of course that's how it works. It's like trying to get a warranty, right? Nobody wants you to use the warranty, right?
They don't think it's actually going to happen, but
they don't think it's going to happen, but you so make it happen. If they say, hey, I'll pay for your college degree. If you come man the fast food window for 4 years, take them up on the offer, and just say, sure, I can live a moderate life, and I can, if I can make this amount of time, and you may be really busy. I mean, working and going to school at the same time is really hard, really hard. And so I don't want to, maybe your 4-year degree should take 8 years, and that's also be okay with that. Also be okay with summer classes. Don't be afraid of just saying, I'll get a credit here or there. If it's show up to this class and it's it's some test. I took a test at one of the colleges that I went to. It was kind of the equivalent of like an IQ test. And they were just like, well, you clearly don't need any math. Right. And they were just like, and I was just like, that's 20 credits. That's 20% of my degree done because I showed up to take some goofball test. Right. Like do not, I think think these opportunities there are out there. And a lot of people don't take them because it's just not common. It's just not orthodox. It's just not normal, but be the not normal one. There is a wild world out there of people that have found loopholes in a lot of these regulations, and you should abuse every one of them.
They're called our favorite. They're called agorists.
Yes.
The people that find the best loopholes. But normies do it too, but yeah. Well, this was really interesting, and I'm glad we talked about it because I did find myself falling a little bit more on the anger side, even though in my mind I knew that wasn't justified. Emotionally, it was just like, hey, I feel like we keep getting kicked. Like my husband and I were like, and it's just like, we just keep paying for everything. And you look at other people are like, why are you doing this to me? But that's not there are some people that do purposely game the system. So those people aside, it's not those people you should be angry at. It's the people that did it in the first place. So, and find a way around it. What are your final thoughts, Hodey?
Yeah, the Octomom is a rare thing.
Yeah.
It's
I happen to know a few people that actually do live like that, but I know more people that don't.
Right, exactly. And the thing is it's by design. We prop up the Octomom and the people who do it because we want you to think that everybody is like this.
Yeah.
The more time you spend fighting with your neighbor, the more time you get into this left-right metronome, and this just empowers politicians.
And have some fake idea about millennials eating avocado toast and not working, because that's actually the opposite. Well, the avocado toast part is it, which is good. I like avocado toast. But
something great. It's okay. I love avocado toast too. I don't know. One of the things that you learn in sales is to turn everything into a positive, right? And it's one of the best lessons I learned when I was at the restaurant. Instead of saying, hey, I'm so sorry you had to wait, saying, hey, thank you for your patience, right? People just feel better about this.
Yeah.
So if you're going to sell this idea, if we understand the government's the problem, and you see people like fighting about this, like I said, like you should validate how they feel. And so just say, hey, it's not fair. I'm paying the price for something. I already paid mine off. That's not fair. You can say yes. And then at the same time, I've talked about the person who had to take out the loans, who says, well, I'm having to pay these. I'm in over my head. And you can say yes to both of these people. So this really is something that I think this is one of the rare topics that you can kind of transcend the divide on. This isn't like abortion where they're like, it's either a life or it's not. This is something where you can kind of give everybody what they want in this. Because I think the left and the right are very, they can get crazy, but there's a lot of common sense on this issue. I don't know anybody that when I mentioned the different credit hours and making them all 120, why? Nobody's going to defend it. Nobody. Like there's nobody that's going to defend theology majors having to take, 12 credits of mathematics courses that they've already shown that they have that they can graduate from. If you have somebody who's gotten an A in calculus and you send them back to pre-algebra, nobody with common sense is going to defend it. You look at the economic system that we've created around this and all these unique special laws for these student loans because they wouldn't function otherwise. And people would just say, well, that's not right. I mean, nobody thinks it's right. There's nobody who thinks this system is not broken or is well managed or is well regulated or is well maintained. And so this is something that you can kind of cross left and right barriers on. There are some people who are going to say it's forgiveness. It's not debt. And there may be some correction you have to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Some people just don't understand how economics work.
Right. And you can teach them to understand where should I have to pay for this guy thing? But I think everybody can come together and say, we really need to fix these issues, and I think that this is something that we it gives us the opportunity to talk about it like this and to say, all right, well, now that we've kind of all got it in front of us, I think 99% of Americans are going to be like, oh yeah, that's screwed up. And the changes are looking at us in the face, So really, I think this is a great selling point for liberty right now. I think student loan forgiveness is a great point for libertarians to kind of start at if you're going to reach other people that normally it's very difficult to reach. Because I think just even if you only ever get them in this area, people try to be like, oh, I converted them to full anarchists or full libertarians. Let them stay Republicans and Democrats. But if they recognize that the system is broken and demand change, that's a really cool thing. I mean, we've managed to change drug laws by people still being registered Republicans and Democrats, and both have really crappy history with drug laws, right? But we can make the changes by having most people all of a sudden be like, yeah, this is messed up. What's going on? And that's definitely something that we can achieve within our lifetimes regarding higher education.
Well, I love when you're positive about things. That's why I love to have you on, because honestly, it can get pretty bleak out there, especially in the world of social media. Or when I visit people that have a real strong political leaning one way or the other that are my friends, and I just get so depressed. But at the end of the day, we can take advantage of this, and we can also take advantage of things that will change the system. And I hope that one day this is rolling down this hill to where it implodes and the prices decrease automatically. You know what I mean? Because it's not sustainable. But in the meantime, we will be here to guide you into becoming morticians and and game writers.
All the great jobs.
Yes.
Dead Bodies and Mario 3, guys. You're ready.
Okay. I'm going to end this show as I always do. Thanks for listening, guys. I wish you peace, grace, love, and fuck the state.